This is the 19th time in more than 3 years that Indian and Chinese military officials have sat down to hold talks to try and end that border standoff. But there's a big difference this time around. Both sides have significantly dialed down the rhetoric. So far, 18 rounds of talks have failed to end the stalemate, with both sides refusing to see eye to eye on pulling back their troops from the contested frontier. They also insist that both sides need to go back to positions they occupied before the 2020 clash. But this week, when military commanders from both countries met, they discussed confidence-building measures and a way to reduce the trust deficit, Indian officials say. There was also an emphasis on maintaining current positions on the ground and for troops on both sides to stick to border protocols and avoid further clashes. Discussions also looked at bringing down troop deployment to the region. The last time the two sides held talks was just before a meeting between their defense ministers, after which New Delhi accused Beijing of eroding the basis of bilateral ties. New Delhi has maintained that China is the aggressor, a charge Beijing denies. But with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi set to meet his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping at the BRICS summit in Johannesburg a week from now, both sides seem to be taking a more conciliatory approach. Analysts say this could be a precursor to a bilateral meeting between the leaders. They've not held talks since the standoff started and have only interacted once, very briefly at a dinner at the Bali G20 last year. Last week, Indian officials disclosed that the two leaders had spoken briefly of the need to stabilize bilateral ties. Many experts are also drawing parallels to what happened in 2017 when another border standoff along India's eastern border with China was resolved after a meeting between the two leaders. Indian and Chinese foreign ministers and national security advisors have already met at the sidelines of various BRICS meetings in South Africa, and now all eyes will be on that leaders summit next week and whether or not a meeting in Johannesburg is what will bring this border standoff to an end, which already marks the most serious deterioration in ties between both neighbors since they fought a war back in 1962. Neha Poonia, SABC News, New Delhi.